Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that something you once did effortlessly, something as simple as getting out of a chair, now takes everything you have. Your legs feel heavier than they used to. Your arms that once carried groceries without a second thought now tremble under the weight of a gallon of milk. You look in the mirror and the person staring back at you seems somehow smaller, somehow less solid than you remember. And the frightening part is that this did not happen overnight. It happened slowly, invisibly, one day at a time while you were busy living your life. What if that process was not just normal aging? What if it was something specific happening inside your body? Something that science has finally identified, and more importantly, something that can actually be stopped. Here's what nobody tells you. The muscle you are losing right now is not just about appearance. It is about your independence. It is about whether you will be able to live in your own home 5 years from now, whether you will be able to travel, play with your grandchildren, or simply walk to the mailbox without holding on to something. Muscle is not vanity. Muscle is survival. And there is one compound, one natural substance that your own body used to make in abundance. That is the key to whether you keep that muscle or keep losing it. Most people have never heard of it. And by the time you finish reading this, you will understand why that is such a tragedy and exactly what you can do about it. Starting today, the condition quietly stealing your strength has a name. It is called sarcopenia. It sounds clinical and distant, but it is devastatingly common. Nearly 1 in every 3 adults over the age of 60 is affected by it. And by the time a person reaches 80, that number climbs to nearly 1 in 2. Sarcopenia is the gradual progressive loss of muscle mass and strength that comes with aging, and it is not simply a cosmetic issue. It is the reason falls become more dangerous. It is the reason recovery from illness takes longer. It is the reason so many seniors who were once vibrant and active find themselves suddenly dependent on others for the most basic tasks of daily life. And here's the part that will stay with you. Most people experiencing sarcopenia have no idea it is happening until the damage is already severe. By the time the weakness becomes obvious, years of muscle loss have already occurred beneath the surface. But here is where this story takes a turn that changes everything. Researchers studying sarcopenia kept asking a question that seemed almost too simple. Why do some people age and retain their strength while others deteriorate so rapidly? The answer they found was not just about exercise. It was not just about eating enough protein. It pointed to something far more specific, HMB, that acts like a guardian of muscle tissue at the cellular level. A compound that younger bodies produce efficiently, but aging bodies progressively lose the ability to make. And when scientists figured out how to measure it, supplement it, and study it in controlled trials with real seniors in real clinical settings, what they found was extraordinary. That compound is called HMB, which stands for beta-hydroxybeta-methylbutyrate. Before you decide that sounds too complicated to matter to you, stay with this because the mechanism behind it is something that will completely change the way you think about aging and muscle loss. HMB is not a synthetic drug. It is not something invented in a laboratory. It is a substance your own body has been making your entire life, derived from leucine, which is one of the essential amino acids found in the protein foods you eat every single day. Your body takes leucine from the food you consume, runs it through a specific metabolic conversion process, and produces HMB as a byproduct. That HMB then circulates through your bloodstream and reaches your muscle cells, where it performs a function so critical to muscle preservation that without it, your muscles begin to self-destruct at an accelerating rate. Now, here's the part that explains why so many people over 60 struggle with muscle loss even when they think they are eating well. The process of converting leucine into HMB becomes significantly less efficient as you age. It begins declining around age 50 and accelerates sharply after 60. So even if you are eating chicken, fish, and eggs every single day, even if your protein intake looks perfectly adequate on paper, your aging body is converting far less of that leucine into the HMB your muscles actually need, and it gets worse. Even the HMB that does get produced becomes less effective because aging muscle cells develop what researchers call anabolic resistance, meaning they become less sensitive and less responsive to the signals that tell them to preserve and rebuild tissue. You are producing less of a compound your muscles need, and your muscles are simultaneously becoming harder to reach with it. That is the double trap of sarcopenia that almost nobody talks about. So, what does HMB actually do when it reaches your muscle cells? This is where the science becomes genuinely remarkable and where you begin to understand why clinical researchers grew so excited about what they were finding in their studies. HMB works through multiple pathways at the same time, which is unusual for a natural compound and part of what makes it so powerful. First, it dramatically slows the rate of muscle protein breakdown by blocking specific enzymes that your body uses to degrade muscle tissue. Think of it as shutting off the demolition crew that tears down muscle fiber. When HMB suppresses those enzymes, muscle breakdown slows considerably, and the net balance of your muscle shifts toward preservation rather than loss. That alone would be significant, but HMB does not stop there. At the same time it is slowing breakdown, HMB is also stimulating a pathway called mTOR, which is the same cellular mechanism that gets activated when you do resistance exercise. This pathway sends signals to your muscle cells, telling them to synthesize new protein, to build new tissue, to grow and repair. In younger people, lifting heavy weights is the primary trigger for this pathway. But HMB can activate it metabolically without the weights, without the gym, without movements that many seniors simply cannot safely perform due to joint pain, balance issues, or medical conditions. This is what makes HMB so different from anything else researchers had studied before. It was offering a biochemical alternative to exercise for the specific purpose of maintaining muscle mass. And then there is a third layer. Research suggests that HMB also helps regenerate damaged muscle cell membranes and may influence the behavior of satellite cells, which are essentially the stem cells of muscle tissue. Satellite cells are responsible for repairing damaged muscle fibers, and their activity naturally declines with age. HMB appears to help reactivate them, giving aging muscle tissue a greater capacity for self-repair than it would otherwise have. When you put all three of those mechanisms together, what you have is a compound that simultaneously slows muscle destruction, triggers muscle-building signals, and enhances the repair capacity of the tissue itself. No wonder the clinical results caught everyone's attention. One study that particularly stands out was published in the Journal of Gerontology and focused specifically on what happens to muscle tissue during bed rest in elderly patients. This is important because periods of inactivity are extremely common among seniors, whether due to illness, surgery, hospitalization, or simply a difficult stretch of reduced mobility. The study found that elderly patients who supplemented with HMB maintained their muscle mass during 10 days of complete bed rest, while the group taking a placebo lost significant amounts of muscle tissue during the same period. 10 days, that is how fast it happens in older adults. Researchers have documented muscle loss of 5 to 10% of total muscle mass in just 1 week of inactivity. That kind of loss can take months to recover from, if it is recoverable at all. The idea that HMB could essentially function as a metabolic shield against that loss, even during complete immobility, was groundbreaking. Another clinical trial looked at nursing home residents, people who were already in a state of limited mobility and physical decline, and gave them HMB supplementation over 12 weeks. The results were striking. Grip strength increased by nearly 14%. Leg strength increased by close to 18%. These were not athletes in a controlled research environment. These were elderly nursing home residents, and within 3 months, their functional strength measurably improved. Grip strength and leg strength are not just numbers on a chart. They represent the ability to open a jar, to stand up from a chair, to walk down a hallway without assistance. They represent independence. They represent quality of life. And HMB moved those numbers in a meaningful direction. The typical dosage used in clinical studies ranges from 1 and 1 to 2 to 3 G per day, usually divided into 2 or 3 smaller doses taken throughout the day to maintain steady levels in the bloodstream. This approach ensures that your muscles have continuous access to HMB's protective effects rather than experiencing a single spike followed by a long gap. Before adding any supplement to your routine, it is always wise to speak with your personal healthcare provider, especially if you have kidney concerns or take ongoing medications. But for those who can use it safely, the evidence suggests that HMB represents one of the most meaningful nutritional interventions available for age-related muscle loss. Now, here is where this gets even more interesting. and where a critical question arises that most people never think to ask. If HMB comes from leucine and leucine comes from food, then which foods deliver leucine in the highest amounts and in forms your aging body can actually absorb and use efficiently? Because the answer to that question is not as obvious as it seems, and the right combination of foods can significantly amplify the effectiveness of HMB in your body. There are 7 specific foods that stand out from all the rest, and understanding why each one works will change the way you think about every meal you eat. But before we get to all 7, there is something about the very first food on this list that most people get completely wrong. And getting it wrong means missing out on one of the most powerful muscle preservation windows in your entire day. The first food is cottage cheese, and the timing of when you eat it matters more than almost anything else about it. Cottage cheese is exceptionally rich in leucine, the direct precursor your body needs to produce HMB. But what makes cottage cheese uniquely valuable among all the high leucine foods is the nature of its protein. Cottage cheese contains primarily casein protein, which is a slow digesting form that releases amino acids gradually over several hours rather than delivering them all at once. This slow release creates a sustained supply of leucine in your bloodstream that extends well beyond the meal itself. Now consider this. The period when muscle breakdown is most accelerated in older adults is during sleep. During those 7 or 8 hours, when you are not eating and not moving, your body has no incoming amino acids to draw from. And so it begins breaking down your own muscle tissue to meet its metabolic needs. Your muscles are literally being cannibalized while you sleep. But if you consume cottage cheese about 30 minutes before bed, the slow-releasing casein protein creates a steady overnight stream of leucine that continues converting to HMB throughout those nighttime hours, providing a protective barrier against exactly that breakdown. One simple food eaten at one specific time standing guard over your muscles while you sleep. I said Craig, I use soy. The difference it can make over weeks and months of consistent use is substantial. During the day, cottage cheese blends into almost any meal pattern without effort. A half cup with a handful of nuts in the morning delivers a strong leucine dose before the day begins. Blended with herbs and a touch of olive oil, it becomes a savory spread that pairs with vegetables or whole grain options. But remember, the nighttime use is where the real magic happens for muscle preservation, and that is the habit worth building first. The second food is Greek yogurt, and the reason it earns a place on this list is both the quantity and the quality of what it delivers. Through the straining process that gives Greek yogurt its thick texture, the protein concentration becomes nearly triple that of regular yogurt. That concentrated protein is rich in leucine, making it one of the most efficient foods for supporting HMB production relative to the volume you are actually eating. For seniors who may struggle with large appetites or large meal portions, this density matters enormously. You can get a meaningful leucine dose from a relatively small serving, which makes it sustainable as a daily habit. Greek yogurt also delivers what researchers call a biphasic protein release, meaning some of its protein absorbs quickly and some absorbs more slowly, creating both an immediate and an extended supply of leucine for your muscles to work with. For aging muscles dealing with anabolic resistance, this sustained delivery helps overcome some of the metabolic inefficiency that makes muscle preservation so difficult in later life. Full fat varieties offer an additional benefit because the fat content supports absorption of vitamin D, which plays a direct role in muscle contraction and function. Do not overlook that detail. Many seniors are deficient in vitamin D without knowing it, and that deficiency silently compounds muscle weakness. Greek yogurt addresses multiple layers of the problem at once, which is why it belongs in your daily routine without question. The third food on this list has been eaten by humans for thousands of years, costs almost nothing, and is sitting in most people's refrigerators right now, being dramatically underused for the purpose of muscle preservation. Eggs are arguably the most perfectly bioavailable source of muscle-supporting nutrition that exists in nature. Bioavailability means the proportion of a nutrient that your body can actually absorb and use, and eggs score higher on this measure than almost any other whole food. For seniors whose digestive efficiency has declined with age, this bioavailability is not a minor detail. It is the difference between nutrients that actually reach your muscles and nutrients that pass through without being used. The leucine in eggs converts efficiently to HMB, and because the full egg, yolk included, delivers vitamin D, B vitamins, and essential fatty acids alongside that leucine. The entire package works synergistically to support what HMB needs to function optimally. There was a period when eggs were unfairly maligned over concerns that have since been substantially reconsidered by researchers. The current evidence is clear that for most adults, eating whole eggs does not negatively impact cardiovascular health. And the nutritional cost of avoiding the yolk and eating only whites is significant in terms of losing exactly the micronutrients that make eggs so effective for muscle health. 2 to 3 whole eggs in the morning set the muscle preservation machinery in motion early in the day and keep it running through the hours when most seniors are at their most physically active. Hard-boiled eggs added to a salad at lunch extend that protection into the afternoon. The versatility of eggs means there is never a good excuse to miss the leucine and HMB support they provide. The fourth food introduces something that none of the others on this list can match, and it is the reason why salmon deserves its own category in any serious conversation about muscle preservation in aging adults. Yes, salmon is a high-quality protein source rich in leucine, which converts to HMB and protects muscle tissue in the ways already described. But salmon also delivers omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA, in concentrations that have a direct and measurable impact on the inflammation that drives muscle loss. Here's why that matters so much. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the most underappreciated accelerators of sarcopenia. As we age, inflammatory markers in the bloodstream tend to rise gradually, and this persistent background inflammation directly attacks muscle tissue, accelerating its breakdown and interfering with the signals that trigger repair. Omega-3 fatty acids work at the molecular level to suppress exactly those inflammatory pathways, creating an environment inside your body where HMB's muscle-preserving effects can work far more effectively. The protein builds the wall, and the omega-3s keep the wrecking ball away. Salmon also contains natural vitamin D, which, as mentioned in the context of Greek yogurt, supports direct muscle function beyond just mass. 2 to 3 servings per week, roughly 4 to 6 Oz each time, is what the research supports as meaningful for these combined benefits. Baked with lemon and olive oil for dinner, added cold to a salad for lunch, or prepared as simple patties using a canned variety for convenience, salmon fits into almost any eating pattern without requiring elaborate cooking skills. What it requires is consistency, because the anti-inflammatory benefits of omega-3s accumulate over time rather than appearing after a single meal. The fifth food is one that sometimes gets complicated reactions, but the evidence for its role in muscle preservation is difficult to argue with. Beef contains some of the highest concentrations of leucine found in any commonly eaten protein source, making it exceptionally efficient at driving HMB production. But beef also delivers something the other foods on this list do not provide in significant amounts, and that is creatine, a compound naturally stored in muscle tissue that directly supports strength and muscle energy production. For seniors, natural creatine levels in muscle tissue decline with age, contributing to the fatigue and weakness that many attribute solely to general aging. Getting dietary creatine from beef helps replenish those stores. Additionally, beef provides iron in a form called heme iron, which is absorbed far more efficiently than the iron found in plant foods. Iron is essential for delivering oxygen to muscle tissue, and iron deficiency, which is more common in older adults than generally recognized, directly impairs muscle function in ways that no amount of leucine or HMB can compensate for. Choose lean cuts to minimize saturated fat intake and keep portions to 3 to 4 Oz 2 to 3 times per week. Thinly sliced in a stir fry with colorful vegetables, incorporated into a hearty soup, or prepared as a simple grilled portion, beef delivers its muscle-preserving combination of nutrients without requiring complicated preparation. The key is regularity over quantity. Small, frequent servings maintain a consistent supply of the leucine and supporting nutrients that keep HMB production running at the level your muscles need. The sixth food on this list works differently from all the others, and that difference is the reason it belongs in a special category for anyone seriously committed to preserving muscle as they age. Whey protein is derived from milk, and it contains up to 14% leucine by composition. one of the highest concentrations of this critical amino acid found in any protein source, natural or processed. But what truly separates whey from everything else is not just the amount of leucine it contains, it is the speed at which your body absorbs it. Within 30 minutes of consuming whey protein, leucine is already appearing in your bloodstream and beginning its conversion into HMB. That rapid delivery creates what researchers describe as a leucine spike, a quick surge in the acid that triggers a fast and robust HMB response in muscle tissue. This rapid response is particularly valuable in two specific windows. The first is immediately after any form of physical activity, even something as gentle as a walk around the block or a session of light stretching, because muscle tissue is maximally sensitive to HMB's anabolic signals in the post-activity period. The second window is first thing in the morning when your body is emerging from the overnight fast and your muscles have been in a catabolic state for hours. A single scoop of whey protein in a glass of milk or a milk alternative within the first hour of waking can interrupt that catabolic state quickly and efficiently, shifting your muscles from breakdown mode back toward preservation mode before the day has even fully begun. Blended with frozen berries and a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, it becomes a complete breakfast. Stirred into oatmeal or added to a bowl of yogurt, it enriches an existing meal without any noticeable change in taste or texture. For seniors who find themselves struggling to eat enough food at mealtimes due to reduced appetite, Whey Key, WHEYKEY, whey protein, offers a way to dramatically increase leucine intake in a small, easily consumed volume. That practical advantage should not be underestimated. The seventh and final food on this list is the one that surprises people most, not because it is exotic or expensive, but because most people have severely underestimated what it can do. Quinoa is a seed that behaves nutritionally like a grain, and unlike virtually every other plant-based carbohydrate source, it contains all 9 essential amino acids in meaningful amounts, making it what nutritionists call a complete protein. For muscle preservation purposes, this is significant because it means quinoa delivers leucine, the HMB precursor, in a form that your body can actually use without needing to combine it with other foods to complete the amino acid profile. For seniors who are reducing their meat intake for any reason, or for those dealing with conditions that make heavy protein foods less comfortable to eat, quinoa becomes an extraordinarily valuable tool. Its leucine content is not as high as whey or beef, but for a plant food to deliver it at all in usable form is remarkable. Beyond the leucine, quinoa provides magnesium, potassium, and phosphorus, 3 minerals that are directly involved in muscle contraction and recovery, and that become progressively depleted in aging bodies. Magnesium deficiency alone can cause muscle cramping, weakness, and disrupted sleep, all of which compound the challenges of sarcopenia. Quinoa addresses these mineral deficiencies at the same time it supports HMB production, making it more than just a protein source. It is a comprehensive tool for muscle health that also happens to be gluten-free, which matters for the significant portion of seniors who experience inflammation in response to gluten and may not even realize it. Prepare a large batch at the start of the week and use it as the base for multiple different meals, warmed with milk and a drizzle of honey as a breakfast porridge that replaces refined cereals with something that actually supports your muscles. As the foundation of a bowl, topped with eggs or canned fish for a complete lunch that compounds leucine sources for greater HMB output. Stirred into soups and stews as a thickener that also silently boosts the protein and leucine content of the entire dish. The fiber in quinoa supports gut health, and that matters more for muscle preservation than most people realize. Emerging research has established a meaningful connection between the health of the gut microbiome and the body's ability to absorb and utilize the amino acids that HMB production depends on. A healthy gut means better amino acid absorption, which means more leucine reaching the metabolic pathways that produce HMB, which means better muscle protection. Quinoa supports every link in that chain. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. The research on HMB did not come from the supplement industry. It came from clinical investigators studying real seniors in real hospitals and nursing facilities who were facing real muscle loss under circumstances where exercise was not possible. They were not trying to sell anything. They were trying to solve a problem that costs healthcare systems enormous resources and robs millions of older adults of their independence every single year. And what they found was that a natural compound your own body makes, combined with the right foods to support its production, could make a measurable difference, even in some of the most challenging circumstances imaginable. That is not marketing language. That is peer reviewed clinical science, and it points toward something genuinely actionable. You do not need to implement all of this at once. In fact, trying to change everything simultaneously is one of the most reliable ways to change nothing. Start with one food. If you are not already eating cottage cheese before bed, that single habit could begin shifting the overnight muscle breakdown equation tonight. If mornings are a challenge and appetite is low, a scoop of whey protein blended with a handful of frozen berries takes 3 minutes to prepare and delivers more leucine than most people get in an entire breakfast. If you already eat eggs, simply eating the yolk instead of discarding it is a change that costs nothing and adds meaningfully to the nutritional value of something you are already doing. Small changes maintained consistently compound over time into results that feel significant. What is at stake here is worth naming plainly. It is not just muscle mass. It is the ability to live independently. It is the ability to move through your home without fear of falling. It is the ability to be present and physically engaged with the people you love. It is the difference between being someone who participates in life and someone who watches it from a chair. Muscle is the tissue that makes all of that possible, and its loss is not something most people take seriously until the loss has already become severe. But you are reading this before that moment. You have the information now. You understand what HMB is, why your aging body produces less of it, how it protects your muscles through mechanisms that science has now clearly documented, and which specific foods you can use every single day to support its production and amplify its effects. The question that remains is a simple one. What are you going to do with that information starting today? Because your muscles are not waiting. Every day without action is a day the balance tips further toward loss, and every day with the right nutrition is a day the balance tips the other way. The compound works. The foods work. The research is clear. All that is left now is the decision to